welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to get into this new palette from Tarte. This just launched on the Tarte website. You can also pick this up at Sephora, and I think it's also available at Ulta. It retails for $45 and you get 20 different shades, and this is their Amazonian clay formula, and I actually wasn't going to buy this palette. I watched my friend Mel Thompson's video about this palette. Once I watched her review on it, I was like, I've got to pick this up. I've got to try it for myself and just play around with it. These are just kind of great everyday shades. They're very easy, very soft on the eye. So I just went ahead and picked it up. Now, of course, I pretty much already have all of these shades 100 times over, but it is nice to have it all in one palette because a lot of the palettes that I have that have these similar shades are split up into individual palettes. And I will say I compare it a lot to some of my Charlotte Tilbury palettes because as I was playing around with it, that was the vibe it was giving me. So I will get into all of that later on in the video. And in my final thoughts, I will kind of go through the differences between this formula versus Charlotte Tilbury because there are some differences, even though the shades are very similar to a lot of the Charlotte Tilbury palettes that we have. So I create 3 eyeshadow looks using this palette. I'm going to also be putting up some swatches and comparisons of some other palettes that I have in my collection. I'm sure I've used the Amazonian clay formula from Tarte, but it's been a long, long time. So I really couldn't remember how I felt about it. I didn't know if I loved it. It's just been a long time. I would say probably 2 years or longer. I just can't think of a palette off the top of my head that I use frequently or that I used frequently in that formula. So it's a very beautiful palette. I love the outside packaging. It's very kind of feminine and dainty and just very sturdy. So you get this really nice full-sized mirror and the packaging is sturdy. And I like how this lid doesn't go all the way up. It's a nice metal packaging, which I appreciate. The description on this palette is the next generation version of Tarte's cult classic Tartelette palettes. This palette features 20 rosy and bronze shades. And the Amazonian clay formula is supposed to deliver better, longer, and truer wear. There are 10 mattes, 4 pearlescents, and 6 metallic finishes arranged in rows to create effortless, natural looks. The nutrient-rich colored clays allows for maximum pigment and all-day wear, while the shadows won't crease or fade even on oily lids. So that's all the information about the palette. Let's go ahead and jump into the 3 eyeshadow looks that I did using this palette. And then we will get into the swatches. And then, of course, I will get into my final thoughts. So I will see you guys then. Okay, so let's play with this new palette from Tarte. This is how it comes. And I was just drawn to the everyday shades in this palette. I don't know. It smells divine too. I'm going to be honest. It smells so good. I want to go into this shade right here. I want to see, on the camera, it looks a little bit lighter than it is in real life. I want to see what that shade will look like in the crease on my skin tone. I have like a medium tan skin. So I am going to put that right here in the crease and just see if I can build up any dimension. Now, I did put on an eyelid primer. I'm using the Makeup by Mario eyelid primer. That shade kind of gives a little bit of dimension, but not much. It's a good base, but I don't know that it's going to show up that much on my skin. So I'm going to go ahead and grab this shade right over here. Definitely a very soft, soft formula. And it's blending beautifully. Where it's like, it's not so much pigment that you kind of lose control of it, but the pigment blends. Like it's a very soft, soft formula. I love the smell of these eyeshadows. They smell so good. I'm gonna grab that shade right here on this brush, which this is a Dose of Colors brush that comes in their 5-pan palettes. And I'm gonna focus this right here on the outer corner. Now this formula is so soft that if you have any kind of patchy spots, you can go into one of the lighter shades and it blends it right out. So I'm impressed with the blendability on these shades. I can't get over how soft they are. I think I'm gonna go into this shade now. I'm gonna bring that right there on the outer corner, just kind of creating a little bit of dimension. I'm gonna grab this shade right here. This is one of those very, very soft kind of satin shimmers. Just really soft on the lid. Very smooth and has some shine, but it doesn't have any like metallic shines. It's just more of a solid shimmer. It's really pretty. I'm gonna pick up some of that here on my blending brush, and I'm just gonna bring that up into the crease and kind of bring it into those mattes. And then kind of bring it over top of the mattes here. I am going to go into that shade Charmed, this one right here, and I'm gonna bring that here on the lower lash line. Then I'm going to take my flat tipped brush and I'm going to go into that dark shade right there, which is called Grounded. I'm going to smoke that into the lower lash line. Also going to bring that on the upper lash line right here at the base. Kind of creating some depth right at the base of the lashes. For the inner corner, I want to go into the shade Reflect, this one right here. I'm going to bring that shade right into the inner corner, kind of really opening up the eye and kind of placing it up into the crease. I'm going to bring some of that on the brow bone right up here. Okay, so this is the final look, and I would have put some eyeliner to kind of blend the edges of the lashes into it, but I am just going to be taking off the lash, so it looks like it's, you know, kind of hanging on by a thread, but that's okay. I'm going to be taking it off in a minute anyway, and I didn't put any lower lash mascara on for obvious reasons. But back to the eyeshadow look, this is just very, very soft. This is actually giving me Charlotte Tilbury vibes. Like, these are kind of the looks that I create when I'm using Charlotte Tilbury palettes. So I really like this. Like, I am very, very impressed with the overall quality. And yeah, I'm liking it. So I love the way that the look turned out. I love the amount of depth. It's just very soft, very everyday wearable. Didn't have any issues with the shadows. In fact, they blended better than I expected. So this is a win-win. So this is the final look for look number 1. Let's go ahead and jump into look number 2. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into look number 2. And I want to kind of focus on this area of the palette, something with the pinks. I want to see what this shade will look like on the lid. So I'm going to actually start with that shade. I'll apply the rest with a brush just because my fingernail will block me from doing more than that. I definitely think the finger works better with this color, but it can be applied with a brush. I am going to take my blending brush and I'm going to grab this shade right here. I'm just going to place that right up in here in the crease and kind of use that shade to blend out that shimmer. I'm gonna grab this shade right here and kind of work that shade into the outer corner. I'm just gonna place that right out here just to give a little bit of dimension, and also on the outer corner. I'm gonna take that dark color Luscious and just kind of smoke it a little bit more right here on the outer corner. Then I'm going to go back to the shade Petal. I'm going to bring that right here on the lower lash line. Then I'm going to take a flat tip brush. I'm going to go back into Luscious, which is that darker matte. And I'm going to blend that right on the lash line, just like I did on the other look. And I'm also going to bring that up on the upper lash line, right at the base of the lashes, just to give a little bit of depth. Okay, I'm gonna go into the shade Water Lily, which is the very first shade in the palette. So this is the final look for look number 2, and it is just very soft and pink, and again, Charlotte Tilbury vibes. I will definitely be comparing this palette to a lot of my Charlotte Tilbury palettes, because that is what this gives me. These shadows blend beautifully, and there are some differences between these shadows and Charlotte Tilbury shadows, which I will get into that in my final thoughts. But for now, I love the way that this look turned out. Of course, I would have cleaned all of this up with concealer, but I'm just going to be taking this off so that I can do my final look. So I'm not going to worry about putting concealer on, but that's it for look number 2. Let's go ahead and jump into look number 3, which is the final look. Okay, so I went ahead and wiped off those 2 looks. Let's go ahead and jump into the third look. And I am dying to play with this shade. Like, this is the shade that drew me in the most. I don't know why, it just was. So I'm gonna grab the shade and I want to put it all over my lid and then just kind of work from there. It's such a soft, like, peachy pink. It's so pretty. It's so soft too. It doesn't have any chunk to it at all. It's just such a beautiful soft pink. I'm gonna bring that up into the crease a little bit more, and I'm just gonna put it all over. Oh my gosh, that shade is so pretty. I can't get over it. I'm gonna grab the shade Wildflower right there in the center, and I'm gonna kind of put this over top out here on the outer corner. Okay, I'm gonna grab the shade Water Lily, this shade right here, right into the inner corner. I am going to grab the shade Inspiring, this one right here. Now I'm gonna go into the shade Charmed, this one right here, and I'm gonna pop that right out here. I'm gonna grab my flat definer brush and I'm gonna use this shade Euphoric, this one here on the bottom. I'm gonna use that as a liner. So I'm gonna take my flat definer brush, I'm gonna put my brush into that shade, and then I'm gonna dampen my brush right here at the base of the lashes. I did just kind of wipe this up with a makeup wipe, so I'm going to leave that there for now. I'll probably clean it up, once I put concealer and stuff on. So I'm going to put some color on the lower lash line. So I'm going to go into the shade Inspiring, this one right here. I'm going to place this right up underneath the lashes. I don't know how much it's going to show up, but I wanted to try it and see. Okay, So I went ahead and threw on some concealer and trying to kind of buff out this line. The thing that I like about these shadows is they're so soft that they buff out really easily. They're just really easy to work with, and I really appreciate that about these shadows. I'm going to take a small little smudge brush and I'm going to grab this shade right here, and I'm just going to buff that over top of the line that I created with that dark shadow. And I'm going to kind of go around along the bridge just to add some definition, kind of creating that V shape. Now I'm going to grab my little smudge brush. This is the BK Beauty 204. I'm going to grab the shade Luscious, this one right here, to bring that right out here on the outer corner. Okay, I'm gonna add a little bit more to that inner corner because it kind of wiped away from the concealer, and then I'm gonna put some of that shade on the upper brow bone. So I'm gonna grab this first shade, place it right here just to kind of bring it back since I kind of wiped some of it away from adding my concealer. And then I'm gonna put some right up here. Okay, so I went ahead and finished the rest of my makeup, but I wanted to go into one of these shades and use it as a highlighter. So I decided to turn the camera back on. I want to grab this shade, especially because it's on the end. Like both of these shades, being that they're on the end, I think would be very easy to use as a highlighter. So I'm going to grab this shade here on the bottom, and I'm going to put that shade on one side as a highlighter just to see what it'll look like. Oh yeah, see how pretty that is? Very, very soft. I'm going to wipe my brush off, and then on this other side of the face, I'm going to grab this shade. That one's a little bit too light for my skin tone as a highlighter. That shade reminds me of this palette right here. As soon as I applied it, I was like, oh wait, not only is it a little bit too light, I'm gonna definitely tone it down, but that shade is identical to the way this palette applies. So this is the Ambient Strobe Lighting Palette. And normally when I use this as a highlighter, I run my brush through all three of the shades just to kind of mix it up so that it's not like this. But this shade right here, I am willing to bet is almost identical to this top shade in this palette. Oh yeah, they're super similar. Look at that. I knew it. I knew it applied like that. I mean, that's almost identical. So this is the Hourglass and this is the Tarte. Very similar in shade. I mean, look at that. It is identical in shade. Holy smokes. Look at that. I knew they were exactly alike. I'm going to take a powder brush and just kind of go over top of it with some powder and kind of tone it down just a little bit. Plus I brought it down a little bit too far down here. This shade right here works better for my skin tone, but if you're a lighter skin tone, this is gorgeous as a highlighter. If you like that more metallic strobe type, it kind of saves you from not having to buy the one from Hourglass that's super expensive. Okay, so I am back and this is the final look. I paired it with this lippy. It's from YSL. It's a sample. I don't know off the top of my head what it is. I'll have to look it up and I'll put it right here at the bottom of the screen. It's just a beautiful kind of light pink and so pretty on the lip. So I wanted to pair it with that, but I love the way this eyeshadow look turned out. It's just so soft and kind of romantic and I love it. So that's it for look number 3. Let's go ahead and jump into the swatches and then we will go ahead and get into my final thoughts. So let me go ahead and jump into my final thoughts about this palette. I don't think it's going to be surprising to many of you because I've had a great experience with all three of the looks that I created. This is a great palette, great formula, great pigment, very soft, very blendable, buildable shadows. And I am very impressed. I can see why Mel just kind of fell heavenly in love with it, because it is just a very easy everyday palette for those kind of soft, springy summer looks. And I like this palette. I can see myself picking this palette up a lot. It's very just easy. It didn't take any effort to create the looks. And the entire time I was using it, it definitely gave me the Charlotte Tilbury vibe. And just based on the way that the looks turned out. So I don't think the formula is as good as Charlotte Tilbury's for several reasons. Number one, these shadows are not as pigmented as Charlotte Tilbury's. Normally with Charlotte Tilbury's mattes, I have to go in with a very light hand. And if you go in with too much pigment, it takes forever to blend it out. Charlotte Tilbury's mattes are extremely soft and very blendable, but they're extremely pigmented. These are very soft and blendable, but they're not as pigmented. So that's definitely a difference. I would also say that Charlotte Tilbury's shimmer shades are definitely more pigmented, meaning that you get way more product with one swipe than you do with these shimmers. So there is definitely a difference in quality. I definitely think that Charlotte Tilbury is a better quality. However, with that said, this is a great palette for the price. You're getting 20 shades for $45. And these are Charlotte Tilbury colors. You know, Charlotte Tilbury's brand is always known for those soft, rosy, bronzy tones and those peachy, pinky, bronzy tones. Like that is Charlotte Tilbury's brand. So and when I created these looks, every single time I got done, I felt like I had just got done using a Charlotte Tilbury palette. So even though the formula in the Charlotte Tilbury is better, I don't know that it's that much better to justify the price. This is a great palette for the price. $45 for 20 awesome shades that blend beautifully. The mattes blend out like a dream. They're super soft and kind of buttery, and they just kind of melt into the crease. And I'm very, very impressed with the formula on this palette. Now, I haven't really used any of the other Tarte palettes, so I can't speak to, you know, how it compares to some of the other palettes. It's been a long time since I've used a Tarte palette, so I wouldn't even want to even suggest that it's the same or similar to other palettes. I do have Tarte palettes in my collection, but I don't use them because I have all of this other makeup that I prefer to use over them. However, this will be something that I will reach for consistently. I love the color story in here, and I just love how easy it was. Fantastic. This palette is a 10 out of a 10. If you guys already have these shades in your collection, is it something that you need to run out and grab? Absolutely not. I definitely think this palette is perfect for those who don't really have a lot of makeup in their collection, or if you have been wanting to try out Charlotte Tilbury, but you just haven't wanted to spend the money on her expensive palettes. If you're somebody that's been attracted to the Charlotte Tilbury brand because of these type of tones, but you just haven't wanted to spend the money on it, I get it. This would definitely fulfill that need. But if you already have these shades in your collection, is it a must-have? Absolutely not. But if this was a palette that you had your eye on, I don't think you'll be disappointed in it. It's absolutely beautiful, and I do not regret buying it, not even for a minute. I'm actually really glad that I watched Mel's video because I wasn't planning on getting this. This palette is definitely perfect for people who don't really have a lot of makeup in their collection, or they're just kind of starting out. You kind of get everything that you need. And that would be the type of person that I would recommend a palette like this to. But even with my collection, I can see myself using this because it's just very easy. I like how it's also sectioned. So you have some of your like peachy, rowdy. My dog is over there playing with his toy. So if you guys hear that toy crunching, you know how those toys have the little like, I don't know what's in it, but it makes those little crunching sounds. So if you can hear that, I apologize. He's my 7-month-old golden retriever, and he's a sweetheart. He's noisy. Anyway, but this palette has these nice little sections where they're kind of like the pinks, and then over here you have more of a pink, little bit leaning purple, but I wouldn't say it's fully purple. Majority of this palette is pink on these top 2 rows. Then you come down here and you have some of these bronzy tones, a little bit more on the peachy bronze. So there's sections, and it makes it very easy. The way that this palette is laid out, it's very easy to go in here and pull colors and create looks with it. The way that it's laid out, the way that they blend, the way that they apply, it's just an overall fantastic palette. Packaging's great. I can't think of anything negative to say about it. I mean, the whole time I was swatching and kind of putting my thoughts together for my final thoughts, I kept thinking, okay, is there something I don't like about this palette? And I just can't find anything that I don't like about it. It's a win-win. It is a gorgeous palette. And so that's it, you guys. Those are my thoughts on this palette. Sound off down below. Did any of you guys pick up this palette? What are your thoughts on it? Are you loving this palette? Are you not loving it? Let us know in the comments down below. Like I've always said, your guys' opinion is just as important as anyone else's. So share your thoughts in the comment section. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me in today's video. I hope that you guys all have a wonderful weekend, and I will see you all in my next video. Love you. Bye.